Good afternoon, John Donovan.
Hey, Marty Keller.
Welcome to another Intentional Living podcast and welcome our viewers. We appreciate your being part of this. This Intentional Living podcast is an ongoing inquiry into dealing with patterns of behavior that show up in our lives that we, in our conscious minds, we say, we don't want this. I don't want to behave like this. And yet we do. We do it anyway.
Yeah,
We feel in our bodies, it feels like a compulsion. I can't stop myself from doing this, even though I say I want to. And so the Intentional Living podcast is an inquiry into what's going on and what can we do about that. Am I stuck with this for the rest of my life, or is there hope for a completely different reorientation of myself and my life? And if so, how the heck do I do that? So that's what we
right.
explore here. Um, if you're not a subscriber to the podcast, we ask you to press a little subscribe button underneath the screen and join our family. And also, when you do that, you'll get access to a whole archive of these podcasts. John and I have been having these conversations for 4 years, and we've covered every topic known to the intentional living world and then some. So,
Yeah.
um, and
Hmm.
they're available free of charge. So please feel free to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Last week in our conversation, we explored the whole issue of what we call triggers, the psychological immediate reaction that we have when some stressful situation occurs. And one of the things that we explored is the distinction between a stressful situation that's happening in real time, someone cutting me off in traffic, versus a stressful situation that's a reminder or an echo of something that originally happened when we were little kids and we never had a chance to respond appropriately, and we were stuck creating some kind of defense against the emotional charge that we experience. And then fast forward 20, 30, 40, even 50 years, somebody does something, somebody says something, and we immediately get angry as if it was a car cutting us off in traffic, or we immediately get scared. But we have a very acute emotional response. It shows up as an adrenaline rush. And
Hmm.
so we talked about what that is and how we can find a different relationship with those triggers than we might have learned in our younger lives. And John and I both shared some examples of how that works in our lives. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I invite you to do that. But I had a leftover question, and
Okay.
that has to do with the relationship of projection to identifying what's going on when I feel triggered. Is that something that
Hmm.
you could talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring the board back up.
Okay.
Um, I have I developed what I call the five constants of relationship, and what I was attempting to do was give like a guide to all this other material, or and actually to the mechanism, the practice of reframing trauma or healing. And the second one is on my projections. When I present this material, go through it, so I get questions like, what do I bring to the truth? What's my truth? And I talk about owning the results. And in a clinical situation or a drug and alcohol situation, the results are obvious. I'm codependent, or I'm an addict, or I'm in some type of obsessive compulsive, whether it's gambling, shoe shopping, that's blatant. So I say own the results. Well, and then bring them to the truth. This second constant on my projections, um, if the obstacles to my recovery or stopping whatever the pattern of behavior is that I have subconscious beliefs coming from my experience. And I want to say this isn't because you have a pattern of behavior that you can't seem to break or that you have trouble with addiction. This is the way the human body is built to relegate 9/10 of our experience to our subconscious memory. And it does it for the purpose of completing tasks in the moment. And the task in the moment, pre-industrialized and pre-civilized, was food, shelter, clothing, safety. So if I had to think about everything that happened, I might not be able to stay focused on my immediate needs, food, shelter, clothing, or relationships or belonging that we now know. So whatever I see in somebody else that I have issue with means that there's something in my subconscious that whatever I'm projecting onto that other person, I actually believe about myself, and it's hidden from me. So the simple example would be somebody lying to me. If somebody lied to me and I take issue, now if somebody lies to me, I'm going to take issue with that. If I stay in my center, calm, and say, that's not okay that you're lying to me. I would like you to be honest and carry on a conversation and stay in an inclusive atmosphere, which is in my emotional body. But if I go to, I'll never talk to you again, how dare you do that to me? You don't care about me. Or go away, apathy, just like, oh, I don't care. You're not worth it anyway. To stay in the moment, owning my projections in that high energy state or low energy state out of the current reality, that says something about what's hidden from me. So I would take that projection, whatever it is. What was the projection today? That guy is a worthless, no good slob, something like that. So that was a projection from one of my clients. That guy's a worthless, no good slob. So I asked him, being we were talking about projections, I said, would you be willing, for the purpose of healing now, to own that? Say, I am a no good, worthless slob. So he was willing to do that. He said it, and he could feel something shift inside. As ridiculous as it sounded to him that he was that, being willing to trust me and say it out loud, he felt something. And it made sense to him why he had such an issue with this guy, whatever the guy did. And then the judgment. And when he owned the judgment, that truth, I am what I see in that other person that I'm really pissed off about. Take a deep breath. There's a healing to it. It's like this truth, whatever it is, we're talking about projections. Let me use one of mine. That guy is a bully. Oh, I'm a bully. That truth has encoded in it the motivation for me to be in that behavior for my safety, for my what the reticular activating system and the survival mechanism believes is that's a safe place for me to be. Being the victim was not okay. So I developed this pattern, projected it out onto everybody else, and thought it was them so I could fix it. I would be of value. I could help people. So I'm a bully. Take a breath. And then go into the intent. I intend to be kind. I intend to be gracious, whatever it is. Working with the guys in the jail, one of the sayings they had is, I wasn't arrested, I was rescued. What does that mean? In finally not having to hold on to this lie or behavior or runaway behavior that I knew was compulsion, the only way I could stop was to get arrested. I had a guy, I don't know how the topic came up with, how did you find yourself in jail? And this one gentleman said, I actually put myself here. And I said, what? He goes, I put myself here. And I asked the obvious question, like, why? And he said, because I was hurting my family and I couldn't stop. See, this truth validates the pain that's trying to be hidden by the compulsion. I'm going to say it again. This truth has encoded in it the pain that caused that truth. It's self-validating. It actually, I can, when I do this, I'm mean to the point of cruelty. I could feel, I call it a sloughing. Something leaves, something in me goes, I see you. That must hurt. Not me, the adult, the little kid in there that's screaming for relief, doesn't know how to find relief. He's stuck in a fight, adrenaline mode, freeze, fight, please mode. He's stuck in that adrenaline. And it's self-validating. So one way to find out the truth, which is the beginning of something else, like I'm compulsive, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a compulsive drinker. Yes, yes. No, I don't know what happened here, but that worked for me. Keep me alive, keep me out of stress. I remember the first drink I had. This was, how many years ago was it? I was 13, so 60 years ago. I remember the first drink. I remember the bottle. I could probably tell you the amount of drops of condensation that was on that. It was a Miller, no, it was something ale. Ooh, this is good. I'm forgetting a little bit. It was a quart bottle of ale. It felt the cold, and when it hit my gullet, shit was okay. It was like, holy cow, who's been hiding this from me? It's like, wow, this is cool. Because it gave relief from it's well, alcohol at first is a stimulant, and that's what it did. It just bypassed the reticular activating system, bypassed that fight, flight, freeze, and I was happy. Right? It wouldn't go up on. I'm like happy. It's like I want more of that until it stopped working at age 40, and then I learned this part. I learned how to address my trauma rather than a artificial means. For me was alcohol, rageaholic, workaholic, and a myriad of avoidant behaviors that kept me from feeling the pain, of being immersed in the pain. So now that truth is relieving. It relieves. And then I go in that relieved, high, enlightened, raised in awareness, consciousness frequency. I intend to be sober. I intend to come back. I intend to be kind. Yes, yes, yes. I intend to be sober. I intend to come back. I intend to be kind goes in here as a directive for this to look for something different for me because this other thing quit working. So now this is charged my safety and my well-being with easing the pain on these. These are fish hooks. Every time I do a tree, I take the points off of those fish hooks and eventually just erase them. Not that the trauma didn't happen. It's not like the trauma didn't happen. I was able to process myself in my real time. I was able to nurture and love that little boy inside me that was stuck. And now this mechanism that manifested the behavior of codependency addict avoidant behavior is now charged with manifesting kindness, is now charged with finding a way for me to be violent free, to be gracious, to be a loving, caring, nurturing spouse, father, and participant in my country, my community. For me to be an asset to my community, actually, this is the end result. A place where I feel like I belong. I know where I belong. I'm in where I belong. I have a community of people that I can talk to, my immediate community, and my concern and responsibility is to a larger, I want to say global community of like people. And I'm active in my own healing, and which is active in the healing of the people around me, specifically my children and my grandson. Amazing. This is just an amazing process. There's two things I heard about the truth. Number one, it hurts. So me owning I'm mean to the point of cruelty hurts. Oh, finally, I felt the hurt. Oh, yes, that hurt. Nice deep breath. I intend to be kind. Yes, yes, yes. I hope that on your projections is what we started with. That is a direct line. What I see in somebody else, everything I see in somebody else is true about me. The
Okay,
ones
so
that I have major issue with are the ones that I can use to heal. Go ahead.
yeah, no, exactly. So a couple things. When you work with people like you were sharing with us about um, someone says, I say, let's make it me. I say something that guy's a withholding cold fish,
Right.
and then you say, would you be willing to consider that you are a withholding cold fish?
Yeah.
How do you handle it when people go, no, I'm not?
Um,
No, because and the reason
sometimes,
that's a serious question because oftentimes we don't see that about ourselves. I
right.
remember, so I remember the first time I heard you say, and this was probably 10 years ago or longer, about I'm cruel to the point, or I'm mean to
I'm
the point
mean to the
of
point of cruelty.
cruelty. And you had those five things that we all are, needy, cruel,
Yeah.
uh, manipulative, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember going through that list, say, yeah, I can own this, but I'm not mean. It's like I'm a kind person. And
Yeah.
so I, I I was, because I've been doing this work, I was willing to test that out. Okay, I am a mean person. And as soon as I said that, I started seeing places where I was mean, which I hadn't seen before. But for those who are just starting out for the first time, and we're asking them to own something that just seems so distant from their actual self belief, how do you manage that?
Well, when before I get into any of this logistics of this, like on your projections, I go through and ask them what they want that they don't have.
Okay.
So it gives them a focus. So I tell them everything I say to you is for the purpose of you moving to what you say you want. Sometimes I'll say, trust me, trust the old guy. Sometimes I'll say, placate the old guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Pat me on the head. Just like play. Let's
right.
pretend. Sometimes somebody will say, I'm not that. And I'll just like get a wry smile and turn my head sideways and like, no, come on. And they'll go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So it depends on having this acuity to be able to respond in the moment to. I had a young kid in class today who has been in my class twice, and every time I say own your projections, he wants to tell me that I'm wrong. So I listen. Okay, he goes, I see how that could be true in a couple of cases, but that can't always be true because I see something in everybody else that I'm not there and I've never been. And he's a talker, so he would take 5 minutes to say this to me. And I say, oh, okay, you don't have to agree with me. The next meeting, I say it again on your projections, and he raises his hand and he'll say the same thing again. And I said, that's okay. Yeah, you don't have to. And every time he says it, it changes a little bit. And one of the days I'm going to, um, something will happen where he'll say something that, no, this is definitely not me. And then I said, if you're open to it, let me like see how this might work for you, and lead him into some insight about himself that this is leading to. So we'll see.
One of the uh, dynamics that we live with that all of these things involve um, have to do with the decision that a little kid made, a little 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old kid made
Yes.
before he or she had any reasoning power. It was all an emotional response that said something like, love is dangerous.
Yeah,
And
Marty.
so
That's yeah.
in order to protect myself, I have to I have to be in such a way that people can't get too close, even though that's what I want. And so for me, a lot of these subconscious energies and projections are the result of little Marty's decision. Because I grew up in a pretty violent home, not not necessarily, well, even physically, because my father used to throw things around the house, and they
Yeah.
drank, but we also had my parents had kids that died in childbirth, so we had
Yeah.
just, and then it was a Catholic home, so there were a lot of kids coming one after the other. So most of them came home from the hospital, but some didn't. So I was the oldest, and very quickly I was lost because the new
Right.
ones kept piling in after me.
Right.
So it took me a long time in doing this work to realize all of the subtle ways that I created protection, or we could call
Yeah.
that the defense mechanism.
Yep.
And so um, I'm saying this for the newcomer who might be listening, that the value of being willing without blame or judgment, as it says there in the accountability tree, blame free, judgment free, to consider that these things that we see out there and other people that we don't like in other people might actually be parts of ourselves that we believe that we have or we fear that we have, and to own them would be devastating.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to stay, my little kid is trying to stay safe in the only way that he could figure out how to do it. And in a certain way, when I hear you talk about rageaholic and alcoholic and workaholic behaviors and so forth, um, we're doing a dance as adults. We're kind of
Hmm.
hopping from one foot to the other to try to have relationship and then try to stay free from relationship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we never find, until we come to a place of healing, we never find a place of peace with that.
Right.
And
Yep.
so to go all the way to the bottom of the tree there in self-validation, what I've come to realize is that my parents aren't ever going to give this to me. They're dead and gone, but I can.
Right.
And I can give little Marty what he didn't get by simply feeling those feelings when they show up,
Right.
to be with them, because being with them is validating. That's my experience. Being
Yes.
being with these feelings, particularly the ones that are really uncomfortable, shame, embarrassment,
Yep.
fear, when I can stay with those, um, like when I work with people, I say, can you stay with this for 30 seconds? Just stay with it. Um,
Hmm.
that is an act of validation, which it turns out is an act of love, which is all I
Right.
really. And so
Wow.
the again, the value of recognizing triggers is helps lead me all the way back to, how am I creating self-isolation? You said it earlier, what's my participation in this when I'm causing this ruckus in my
Yeah.
relationship with my wife or my kids?
Right.
What and for me it's always, okay, little Marty's scared of somebody or something here. Let me inquire. Let me be with that.
Yeah.
Let me just make it okay. I give
Yeah.
myself the great line that you taught me. I give myself permission to feel this way.
Yeah.
Take that deep breath and then ask, what do I want? And like you say, over time, shift happens so
Yep.
that so that um, that report that you gave us last week about something like behaving differently in a potential car crash on the freeway, of reacting with concern for the other person rather than anger or rage,
Right.
at some point in time, that shift occurred. You may not be able to look back on it and say, "Oh, that was on December 10th,
No,
2010," but it doesn't matter.
doesn't.
It happened, and
Yeah.
that's what the accountability practice is for me, and that's why looking at triggers and projections. I mean, again, I remember the first time I you asked me to own a projection, and I just squirmed, and um, but I remember um, saying to myself, John said no blame or judgment, so I just this one time I'm going to own this without blame or judgment, see what happens.
Hmm.
And that without blame or judgment actually gave me the permission to try it on,
Right.
see what happened.
Yeah.
That opened the door to that shift that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. That one of the when you were asking me how do I explain this or offer people the opportunity to do it, I sometimes talk about explain that no blame, no judgment, and if somebody's projection is that guy's worthless, and then I ask them, they go, I'm worthless, and he goes, no, no, I'm not. Okay, all right. So what we're doing here, okay, I know you're not worthless, but something in your inner child may be holding this on you. This statement will ferret that out. Blame free, judgment free. I'm not asking you to beat up on yourself. This is not a beat up
Right.
practice. This is a simple truth practice for the purpose of healing. If you're doing this tree just to see how bad you are, then don't do it. Don't do the tree. This is a healing practice. If your intent is to heal, find that truth. And those 5 words are arrogant, entitled, mean, controlling, and needy. It's like I'll say that to a newcomer, and it's not that I'm clairvoyant. I just know people have gone through some kind of childhood where these arrogant, entitled, mean, controlling, and needy are simply the result of trying to figure out, work their way through this trauma. So yeah, good point. Um, I've actually had, sadly, so people leave because they think I'm calling them names.
Yeah, sure.
Just no matter how much I tell them, no, no, this is about what your little child is projecting out into the world, which and that's holding that on you. It's in the subconscious. Let's just see. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Well, we've come to the
yeah.
end of our time together. Before we wrap up, I'd like to offer or extend an invitation to anybody who's watching this for the first time or the first few times to consider coming to one of our group meetings where we work these things practically. People bring their issues, their concerns, their fears, their angers, their doubts, confusions,
Hmm.
their wants, the things that they want that they don't have, and we work with them. John facilitates the meeting, I facilitate, and we have other colleagues that facilitate as well. And
Hmm.
all of these meetings are on Zoom, and the information on when and how to join them will be at the end of the podcast. So please feel free to join and join a meeting. You can participate or you can just watch. Doesn't It's all up to you. But it's the best way to really get a sense of what we're talking about. And so, with that, John, any last minute thoughts before we wrap up?
Um, I'm grateful for having been graced the experiences that were given to me in my recovery so that I could heal and then share them with as many people as possible because I truly have been graced with this information and the capacity to put it down in some kind of sequential way. So,
And
yeah, I'm
I'd
grateful.
say amen. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'll see you next week.
You got it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Uh,